So when we talk about the environmental crisis, what usually comes to mind? Carbon emissions, right? Melting ice caps. But what if that's only seeing half the picture? The book Decolonial Ecology by Malcom Ferdinand argues that to really understand what's going on, we have to dig much deeper into a much older historical wound.
So let's start right in the middle of what Ferdinand calls a modern tempest. And look, this isn't just a storm of climate change and pollution. It's way more than that. It's completely tangled up with social inequality and racial injustice. This painting from 1840, wow, a slave ship caught in a typhoon, it captures the whole idea perfectly. It forces you to see that these aren't two separate crises happening at the same time. No, it's one single, violent, swirling storm.
And this leads us to the critical question at the very heart of Ferdinand's work. Yeah, okay, we're all in the storm, but are we all in the same boat? Think about it. Some people are up on the deck, maybe with a life jacket. Others are chained down in the hold. And some are being thrown overboard. In understanding that difference, that is the absolute first step if we ever want to find a new way forward.
So, this huge inequality points to a fundamental problem that Ferdinand zeroes in on. He calls it the double fracture, this deep structural split in how we even think about the crisis.
And this really lays it out clearly. On one side, you've got the environmental movement, right? They're focused on that vertical split between man and nature. But then on the other side, you have anti-colonial and anti-racist movements. They're fighting the horizontal fracture, the one between colonizer and colonized. And the crazy thing is, for the longest time, these two huge struggles have basically been operating in different universes, as if one has nothing to do with the other.
So that's it. That's the double fracture in a nutshell. Imagine a thick wall built right between two stories. On one side is the story of environmental collapse, and on the other, the story of colonial oppression. Ferdinand's point is simple but powerful. As long as that wall is standing, we can't possibly understand the full picture. And if we can't understand it, how are we ever going to solve it?
And here's where it gets really tricky. Ferdinand points out that this division basically forces you into an impossible choice. He says that you either get to fight for the environment, but you have to stay silent about colonialism, or you get to fight against colonialism, but you have to ignore the ecological side of things. It's a trap, right? A false choice that just keeps the whole destructive system going.
Okay, so how on earth did we get stuck in this trap? To figure that out, we've got to go way back to the very beginning of this fracture, to the European colonization of the Americas, because that's when our entire relationship with the planet got completely re-engineered.
Ferdinand says that colonization forced a new way of living on the Earth, something he calls colonial inhabitation, and it was built on three main ideas. First, geographical subordination. Basically, colonies exist for one reason and one reason only: to serve the mainland, to make it rich. Second, the exploitation of nature. Land, animals, plants, everything is just seen as a resource to be turned into profit. And third, this really powerful term, other side. It's the refusal, often a violent one, to simply share the earth with people who are different.
And this new way of life wasn't just an idea. It was put into place through three incredibly violent steps. Step 1, land grabbing, just taking land by force. Step 2, land clearing, this belief that you had to tame the wild, that you had to clear-cut forests to make way for so-called civilization. And finally, Step 3, massacre, the physical elimination of indigenous people and the oppression of women. It's a brutal foundation.
So what was the end result of all this? It was massive. You take the Earth, this living planet full of different people, cultures, and relationships, and you basically strip it for parts. You're left with a physical planet, an Earth, but you've completely destroyed the world, that web of shared relationships and meaning.
Now, this colonial inhabitation wasn't just some abstract theory. It had a name, a specific blueprint that has shaped our world right up to today. And that blueprint was the plantation.
And this image, it shows you the engine at the very heart of this system. We have to be clear, the plantation was not just a farm. It was more like a violent industrial machine. Its whole purpose was to simplify everything. Turn a complex forest into a massive field of just one crop, like sugarcane. And to do it by exploiting enslaved people, all for the sake of global profit.
This brings us to a really powerful idea from Ferdinand. You've probably heard our current era called the Anthropocene, the age of humans. But he says, hold on, that kind of blames everyone equally. He suggests we should call it the Plantationocene. Why? Because that name points the finger directly at the specific system that caused the crisis, the plantation model. It clarifies who benefited and who suffered.
And this isn't a new idea. The amazing poet Aimé Césaire was writing about this decades ago. He's talking about how natural economies were destroyed, food sources ruined, raw materials looted. He saw with perfect clarity that colonialism was never about progress. It was about violently disrupting everything, both people and nature, for profit.
Okay, so if that's the diagnosis, the double fracture, the plantation Ocene, what's the cure? How do we even begin to heal this deep historical wound and find a different way forward?
Well, Ferdinand's answer requires us to completely flip our perspective. He says we have to stop thinking from the deck of Noah's Ark. You know that story, right? This idea that we can just save a chosen few and let the rest of the world drown in the storm. He says no, forget the Ark. We have to start thinking from the hold of the slave ship. Why? Because that's the place where the connection between violence against people and violence against the earth was most obvious, most brutal, and totally inseparable.
And this isn't just theory. This is what a decolonial ecology actually looks like. You see it in leaders like Francia Marquez, an incredible environmental defender and the vice president of Colombia. For her, there is no separation between the two struggles. Fighting for justice is fighting for the earth. They're one and the same.
So this really changes the goal, doesn't it? It's not about a Noah's Ark that saves a few by leaving everyone else behind. The new goal is to build a world ship, a ship that's big enough and strong enough to carry everyone, and that includes non-humans too, safely through the storm. And this ship isn't built on escape. It's built on justice, on facing each other, and on doing the really hard work of building a shared world.
Look, Ferdinand's work doesn't give us a simple 10-step plan. What it does is leave us with a really deep and incredibly urgent question, a question for all of us, as we stand here in this modern tempest. How do we build a world on an Earth we all have in common, but that none of us truly own?